Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I want to do a VR to the lovely Miss Kelly Ann, her tag that she started, Happy Witch tag. I know I'm a little bit late to this, but I've watched a bunch and they really got me thinking and feeling inspired. And I think it's also a great way for me to incorporate some more positivity and reflect in a really happy light on my magical and spiritual journey. So I have the questions up before me. I haven't really given them much thought because I don't want to overthink my potential answers. I really enjoyed Kelly Ann's idea and synthesis of this tag and what it stood for and the reason why she created it and all that went into it. And the responses that I've watched have been incredible. So I'm just hoping to join in and offer my own 2 cents and use this as a sort of reflection. And if anybody out there resonates or can connect, all the better. So our first question is, what makes you happiest about the fact that you're a witch? This is a complicated question and one that may sort of contradict and overthrow the entire purpose or, I guess, idea of this video. I'm not sure that I necessarily identify with the term witch in present day. It's a term that or a title, I guess, that I've moved in and out of throughout my spiritual journey, one that at times I've found a lot of power in, and at other times I've found to be a bit limiting, or it was as if at points it didn't feel like it sit quite right with me. I would say right now, just the way that my practice is constituted and all that is encompassed within it, it doesn't quite feel like witchcraft to me. I would consider myself a magical practitioner, a magical being, and I definitely don't mind if others refer to me as a witch or think of what I do as witchcraft and speak of it in such a way, but I'm not sure that I would call myself a witch. But for the purposes of this video, I don't mind thinking of my practice and who I am in the terms or through the paradigm or lens of witchhood or witchcraft. So in actually answering the question, what makes you happiest about the fact that you're a witch? I think it's the way that I'm able to now look at life. Before, I think I started to identify in such a way or go down this sort of path, everything felt a bit dull, or at least at the time it didn't feel so dull. But in retrospect and upon reflection, I really wasn't finding much meaning in what I was doing. For me, witchcraft is about, there's a depth, there's this sort of extra layer that gets put on my everyday life. And without it, I'm not sure I would be as appreciative of the world around me and the people in my life. So for me, what makes me happiest about the fact that I'm a witch is the way that I'm able to live a life that feels a lot more meaningful and fulfilling and mindful and aware. I think my awareness in my surroundings in terms of myself has grown exponentially since I've started practicing. For me, it's less about the actual act of casting spells or creating magic of any sort, and it's more about, I would say, a lifestyle, a belief system, a way of living, a way of being that really gets me. And I think that's what has hooked me in and actually kept me where witchcraft is concerned. I think getting involved, a lot of us look to spells and spellcraft and think that that's the most exciting thing there is, but ultimately I think many fall off if that's all there is to their practice. At least that's what I've seen in others, and at least for myself, I know that would be the case if I hadn't found a reason to hang on past the actual act of spellcraft. So for me, it really is just a way of living and experiencing existence. So that's what makes me the happiest about being a witch or a magical practitioner. So, and if you see me looking off, I have the questions pulled up right beside me, so that's that. So the second question is, which practice do you tend to enjoy most in your witchcraft and why? And if you watch this channel, you'll know that I am a tarot reader. That's what I do for my profession. And so divination, the act of reading the cards, is definitely a practice I would consider one of my favorites. And that one's a little bit boring and obvious, especially for anybody who's ever visited my channel or who knows me at all. So reading the cards, I guess in some ways I could think of my practice as being heavily sided toward or weighted in the art of divination and that act of magic. To me, divination is not just the idea or act of reading cards. It's really about truth and knowing, about finding meaning and purpose, or higher sort of level of communication in a way through items or through the act of just, I would say, interpretation through things. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but for me, divination is a lot deeper than just reading the cards. It really is about getting to truth. It's about knowing, it's about learning and figuring things out. For me, knowledge and truth and understanding are really important tenets in my practice. So that's something that feels really crucial. So when I'm divining and I'm reading the cards, it's a lot more than just feeling like I'm getting a message from a card or interpreting something in a card. It really gets at something, I think it gets at something that's really important to me, which is the idea of truth and knowing. And so I use the cards and I use divination, and I'm attracted to that form and type of magic because of that. As far as other things that are a little bit less obvious that I enjoy most in my witchcraft, I really enjoy the idea of sacred space and existing in sacred space, of making anywhere I inhabit sacred. So setting up places that feel right for me, being very, I would say, particular and mindful in the way that I go about living. And so for me, the idea of creating spaces that I can exist within that feel magical, that feel potent and right, to me, that is a form of magic. And I would say it is something within my witchcraft that I enjoy quite a bit. And as of late, I would say sound as a medium for magic has been really wonderful for me. So the idea of sound as a form of energy that is audible, the vibrations in the air, the different tones and frequencies, all of that to me is an area that I find really beautiful. Just listening to music to me is magic. Playing with my sound bowls or singing bowls, the drum that I play, my rattles, my chimes, all of it, the sound of the cards as they shuffle, which I can't really show quite well, but just maybe you can hear it. They just went everywhere. I'm gonna be right back. Okay, so I've picked up all the cards that went in wild directions after trying to riffle and bridge the cards in the air, which was an unsuccessful and unfruitful pursuit. But those are the areas of magic, or the things that I tend to enjoy most in my witchcraft, and why. So the third question is, how have you changed in positive ways as the result of practicing the craft? So for me, I think it really has been a journey of self-discovery, of finding meaning and coming into who I am, a journey of becoming, if you will. So for me, I guess the most positive way that I've changed is that I've become myself, and I'm not sure that I ever would have discovered a lot of facets and aspects of myself without practicing, and the tools and techniques I've sort of honed and come to know and love through my practice, I wouldn't have found myself in such a way. I think I would have been in a much darker place, one that was a lot less aware, a lot less, I would say, just a lot less open to possibility, a lot less optimistic and hopeful for the future and for all that there can be and all the possibilities in life that are open to us. So for me, this really is a way of me identifying, self-identifying, and growing into who I am. And I think the more that I know about myself and come into who I am, the more positive I tend to feel, the more complete I tend to feel. And so that's always, I think, a really positive and helpful thing. So for me, the way that I've changed is that I've just become more of who I am. So there's a muchness, I guess, to me that there wasn't before. And to me, that's really important and powerful. Something I wasn't expecting coming into magic either. I think I came in with a very superficial sort of idea of what witchcraft and magic was. And if that's what got me hooked, all the better. Not all the better, but I guess it is what it is. And I'm glad that eventually the deeper aspects started to permeate my life and grab hold of me. And I think that there is a sort of allure and positive sort of magnetism to the surface level of what witchcraft is. I think getting drawn in by that isn't necessarily a bad thing, and feeling a sort of tie to those more surface level aspects, or even those things that we see in pop culture. I mean, whatever gets us in the door, I think is helpful. So a little tangent on that. Now, number 4, what has been the most positive result you have had from a spell or ritual? So I've had thankfully a bunch that I feel like have worked out quite well and have achieved what I set out for them to achieve, and all of that, and manifested in the way that I hoped. I would say the first, and one that I'm not sure is the most positive, but it did work quite well, was the first spell I ever did, which was a banishing spell on a roommate in college, and that's really where I started to get more heavily invested in my craft and just witchcraft and a spiritual path. And I really needed just space from this person. I've spoken about it in a few times, but it worked very quickly, very potently, and yeah, so it really gave me, I think, faith. It really had me second guessing any doubts that I had about whether magic was real or whether I could do this or anything like that. I would say that spells that I've used for my health, as far as more like chronic, long-standing conditions that I have that are not very pleasant and fun, and I don't really speak about them here, but spells that I've done to help mitigate and remedy and yeah, things like that in regards to my health. Those have all been really fruitful for me, thankfully, and I'm very thankful for those. So those would be really positive spells. And I'm trying to think. I've had a few that I'm like, yeah, that really worked. One that I just did actually for a tarot class that I'm teaching. I was kind of scared I wasn't going to reach the sort of minimum amount of students I needed for it to be a financially sort of worthwhile venture, because I have an overhead in terms of paying for the studio and the materials. So I needed a certain amount of students to be able to even cover the cost of the class itself. And it wasn't looking like that was going to be the case, and I did a spell, and it was right at the tail end of when people could sign up, and I happened to get a lot of students after that, and that felt pretty magical to me. So yeah, those have been those have been the most positive results I've had from a spell or ritual. Those are a few just to run off, and the ones that are on top of my head. So how has your craft enriched the lives of others? I think that's really a beautiful question to ask. Now, I guess me being more me, I have more to offer others in turn. So if I was a lesser version of myself, if I wasn't as fully aware or in tune with who I am, what I would have to give would be a lot less authentic and true and deep. And so I think when I come to any interaction with others, I have a lot of genuine presence to bring. I think I can listen a lot more effectively. I think I can be a comfort or a person to just interact with that feels a lot more, I feel a lot more present and whole. So that's one. Another, I think, is just the acts that the things I've been able to do for others because of my magical practice. So I am a professional tarot reader. That is my career. But at the same time, I like to think that I do help others through what I do. So reading the cards and kind of getting to that idea of truth for others in areas that they're really curious about and looking to know about. Sorry, this lighting's a little bit weird. I'm not sure how it's coming across in the camera, but it's like striped and it kind of has a weird tint to it. But anyway, I like to think that the act of divination and me honing that as a sort of magical craft is something that has enriched and helped the lives of others. And then in a very literal magical sense, I guess casting spells and doing rituals for others that are more, I guess, selfless, that aren't geared at all toward anything related to me, for others who have asked or who are curious, who maybe aren't as knowledgeable on the craft, specifically my younger sister. I've done spells for her and made little sachets for when she went on trips to keep her safe and to ensure she had a good time, and she really appreciated that. At the beginning of this sort of global pandemic type thing we have going on, I made spell bottles for my family to just take out, because my mom was she works at a dentist office, and they were doing sort of emergency cases even at the beginning, so she had to be out and about, and it was just meant for the purposes of protection, and they all really appreciated that, and I think it gave them some peace of mind in some way. And what else? Just things like that. I'll like cleanse my sister's room when she asks me to, and I like to think that I can provide some sense of comfort and sort of like energetic relief to my family and my loved ones through what I can do. And sometimes they ask, and I'm very happy to oblige when they do. So I think that that's a wonderful way that I am able to enrich the lives of others with my practice. Now, What is next? Question number 6. What are you most looking for, or what are you most looking forward to trying in your craft, and why? So what am I excited to dip my toes into? For me, it's always a mystery. I really am a little bit like a magpie, where a bright, shiny new subject matter that grabs my attention might rope me in for a while. I think I don't necessarily follow a specific paradigm or path or lens of practice. I'm not necessarily rooted in like Celtic paganism or ceremonial magic or anything like that. I am definitely more eclectic in my practices, but I do enjoy study of cultures and very established belief systems and sets of practices. But what am I looking forward to trying? I think I'd really like to get into arts and styles of magic that are a lot more healing, more so than just, for example, I think tarot as a tool is healing, but I would say it's more of the healing that may come from tarot is more of a byproduct. It's more of a truth. It's more of a knowing, as a divination art. And the other types of magic that I have kind of dabbled in felt more like manifestation of a thing or seeking out a thing and bringing it in. I like the idea of healing as something that starts inside and grows outward as this warmth. And so I'd really like to get into the idea of healing through magic, not necessarily through any specific medium, whether it be sound or herbs or Reiki, whatever it may be that kind of can incite that healing. I'd really like to get more into arts of that nature. I've spoken about this before, but I don't think it's going to be herbs. I'm not quite the herbalist. I don't have a green thumb. Plants that I have tend to die, and that's been something that I felt kind of lacking in my practice, because I know there is this sort of pull and draw and image of a witch as a naturalist and somebody who is in tune with nature. And while I love nature and spending time outdoors and all of that, I don't think I'm very adept and naturally gifted when it comes to the growing of plants and knowledge surrounding that area. So for me, healing would be maybe through energy, through sound, through ritual. I'm not quite sure. So, but healing as an art, I would really like to expand upon, especially in the coming year. So what's next? Question 7. What do you like the most about the witchy community, online and offline? So the first thing that comes to mind is this sort of love and support that is ever present. It really feels like you are held and welcome in a witchy community, at least where I've traversed. I know that there are areas that, I won't get into that. This is supposed to be a positive tag, so I'm using this to uplift myself, so no bother getting into anything not so positive. But I've felt very welcome and sort of just supported by the witchy community by and large, both in the online sphere and in person. I would say there definitely is a difference to the online sphere versus in person. Online, I think it's easier to find those who have very similar belief systems and ways of practicing, because you're seeking out resources and videos and media that mirror where you'd like to go in your practice and the things you're already doing. And so you run into people online that do that same thing, so they're very similar to you, so you can share experiences and sort of nerd out over the same things. Whereas in person, I think it's been really beautiful to just happen upon people that have very different belief systems and practices than my own, just by chance of being in similar environments. But we don't happen to have the same interests, but we do sort of have this connection in a way, or something to share and learn from each other. So there's a lot of learning. I would say a lot of the community feels very open-minded and welcoming and supportive. So there's a lot of uniqueness, there's a lot of individuality, but this sort of sense of belonging and community among others. So it feels like a perfect balance between an individualist sort of movement or place of being and a very community-oriented one. So I like that balance, and that's really something about the witchy community by and large that I have loved, is just the support and dialogues that have taken place for me. The conversations I've had have been very enlightening and deep and profound, and they're things that you don't necessarily get with others in life who aren't interested in the same things. So you turn to these people, and it is a beautiful thing. So that's that. Next, how do you envision your craft evolving positively in the future? Well, I've said that I don't necessarily, one, identify at this time as a witch, or I don't self-identify as a witch. And I think that for me is, I think for some people, their idea of growth or their path into witchhood is growth for them. For me, I needed the witch title as something to start with, but for me, it feels like where I will go will be, not where I'm identifying as a witch, and that's just my own path with magic and spirituality. But I don't mind being referred to as a witch, as I've said, but I don't necessarily follow any specific paradigm or tradition. Sorry, low battery on the phone. I don't necessarily follow any sort of tradition, and I think I would like to remain and even diversify in the way that I am eclectic in my practice further. I'd like to study more diverse forms of magic, things that are kind of on the outskirts and the periphery. I always love finding little tidbits that feel either forgotten or just, even if they kind of feel inane in some way, I like latching on to things that feel a little bit defunct and jaded and thrown to the side. So just go almost dumpster diving in terms of magical practices. For me, I find that to be really, really fun, and I love looking for weird little bits and odds and ends in terms of traditions and practices and out-of-print books that have weird techniques to offer. I'm all for it. I really enjoy more intuitive pursuits, and I would like to, in a positive sense, trust and investigate my intuition a little bit more to deviate and veer off of the academic path further, so that way I have room to grow organically and to make discoveries for myself through experience rather than through inspiration found in books or through actually following written descriptions of things. I'm not one to actually follow like spells and rituals from books, but I do tend to base a lot of my craft and practice, or at least I take inspiration from a lot of the books that I read, and I do read quite a bit. So I'd like to maybe actually practice more and make more intuitive, experiential leaps, if you will. So that's where I'd like to see my craft evolve in a positive sense. And again, that aspect of healing, I'd really like to be able to offer more to others with my practice. I think I'm starting to reach a place where the finding of myself is getting to a point where it's stabilizing, and then hopefully when I feel very good about where I'm at, I can then offer things to others. Sorry, there's the sound of the train going by. So how do you keep your witchcraft practice healthy, happy, and productive? For me, the first word that comes to mind and the first thing that comes up is change. I'm always changing things up. I find that when I either start to study something or I start to fall into something and I try to hold myself to it, and I'm really not happy in that and I'm drawn to other things, I can't just keep myself in one place and keep myself to one thing. I'm constantly changing my sacred space, how I talked about the idea of creating space and existing within space, and that being a magical practice and an act of its own. I'm constantly changing my space to fit who I am, where I would like to go in life. So I'm having it reflect me, but also implementing things that I feel like I'm not, but would like to be, and then working my way towards that. So I'm constantly setting goals that are achievable, goals that I think I'm already tending towards, goals that feel very natural. So that for me is helpful, setting goals, changing things up and not being afraid of change, kind of resisting inertia, because when I fall into ruts, it's usually because I've tied myself or boxed myself into either some sort of practice that I kind of needed to deviate from, or because I wasn't allowing myself enough room to experiment and move and make mistakes and just be. And so I need space. I need change, and I need the world to be reflected around me almost in a way. So I'm constantly moving through. I have, I think, videos on getting out of magical ruts and sacred space, which to me are very important things, and so I'll link those, and if anybody's curious to check those out. I do still stand by what I've said in those videos, so it applies here. Now, the last question: what is one piece of advice you would share with other witches to help them make their path more positive? I would say something a little bit cliched and corny, but hopefully I can delve into it further and expound. But just be yourself. I think coming into the practice and coming into the craft, you look to others, you look to media, you look to books, and there's so many wonderful people present that to look up to, and it's easy to lose yourself. It's easy to get caught in the web of comparison and trying to mirror what another practice is, or think that what somebody else has or does or who they are is going to make you happy if you adopt those sorts of things into your own life or practice or being. And I've found in my own experience that generally tends to not be the case, that there is a beauty and power and potency in you discovering yourself for yourself. And that's not to say you can't take inspiration for others or look to others or look up to people and have role models, but I think ultimately that you are you, you're the only you that there is. And so rather than grasping at and yearning for the lives of others, or the traits that they may have, or the tools that they have, or the life that they live, finding out for yourself, really doing the hard work to know who you are, what you want, and where you'd like to go, and then setting about that, and then becoming that person that others can then look up to or maybe admire in some way. I think we all have that capability. We all have the ability to become the person that we admire, the person that others may admire at some point in life. And so I think that's an exciting journey of self-discovery, and ultimately, I think your path, your unique path, should be the one that excites you the most, more so than any other. So for other witches maybe coming into their own or on the path, looking to make their path more positive, being yourself is ultimately going to result in positive ends through positive means. So that would be my advice there. I think that wraps up the questions. I had a lot of fun reflecting on this. I think I've smiled quite a bit, and I'm feeling good having gone through those and not having even looked at the questions before I answered them. It was almost like I was realizing things as I was speaking to the answers and answering the questions. So I found that very helpful. So if others don't find it helpful, at least I did. But let me know what you thought of this and your own practices, or maybe your answers to the questions. And if you've done a response to this tag, link me to it. I know I've watched a bunch, but if I haven't watched yours, I would be curious too. I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe if you did. I hope you are all well, and until next time, bye.